In recent years, you've had a rapprochement with Western countries. You've had important Western leaders like Tony Blair coming here. But now there are Western leaders who are queuing up to say that you should go. Do you feel a sense of betrayal about that?
Of course it's betrayal, he said. They have no morals. Besides, if they want me to step down, what do I step down from? I'm not a monarch or a king.
But you make speeches at the UN and you're identified very much with Libya, even if you don't have a formal title.
It's honorary, he said. It's nothing to do with exercising power or authority. In Britain, who has the power? Is it Queen Elizabeth or David Cameron? Mr. Qaddafi said, we didn't understand the Libyan system.
No, I understand the system that you have here. But internationally, you're regarded as the leader.
You don't understand the system here. No, no, no. Don't say I understand. You don't understand. And the world don't understand the system here. The biblical system here. The authority of the people. You don't understand it.
But how do the people show their authority then? Because some who've gone out onto the streets to protest say that your people have shot at them.
No demonstration at all in the streets.
Have you seen? Did you see demonstrations?
Yes, I have. Yes.
Where?
I saw some today. I saw some in Zawiya. Yesterday I saw demonstrations.
Are they supporting us?
No, they're not supporting
us.
They
are not against us.
Some were against you and some were for you.
No, no one against us. Against me for what? Because I am not president. But they love me, all my people with me. They love me all.
But if they do love
they will die to protect me, my people.
If you say they do love you, then why are they capturing Benghazi and they say they're against you there? Why are they in...
It is qaida, it is qaida, it is qaida, not my people. It is qaida.
Al-Qaeda?
Qaida, yes. They came from outside.
So they're the people pulling down the posters and putting up the flag of the king?
It's Al-Qaeda, he said. They went into military bases and seized arms, and they're terrorizing the people. The people who had the weapons were youngsters. They're starting to lay down their weapons now as the drugs Al-Qaeda gave them wear off.
A NATO commander says that there are, quote, flickers of al-Qaeda among the Libyan rebels. Where Michael Holmes is here to discuss the possible risk of the terror group gaining influence in Libya. That is today's Globe Trekking. Michael, good to see you.
Good to see you.
It seems as if people around the world, they want to help the Libyan rebels. They want to help the opposition overthrow Qaddafi. And yet, there could be al-Qaeda among them, we are learning.
Almost certainly there would be elements of al-Qaeda or individuals. You know,
How real is that?
Well, you can file it under sort of shades of grey. You know, there's nothing in Libya that's black and white right now, that's for sure. There is obviously a humanitarian crisis that's going on in Libya. No one really is arguing that Gaddafi should stay. But let's talk about if Tripoli falls, Gaddafi's regime crumbles, and you know, there's a lot of pretty justifiable fears about what a new Libya would look like. Now, as you said, the US NATO commander, Admiral James Stavridis, he told the US Congress yesterday that the intelligence about the rebels is showing that most of them are responsible men and women, good folks fighting for a cause. They want their own freedom, they want tyranny gone, etc. But another unnamed official is backing up Stavridis' statement and says that while there are a sprinkling, let's say, of extremists, nobody should think that the opposition is being led by al-Qaeda.
Is there a real risk here, Michael, when you think about it?
Well, you know, there's a real risk any time you get an impoverished country like we see in Libya, in the Arab world, and it becomes unstable. Al-Qaeda's expert at feeding on that hopelessness. People who are poor, angry, disenfranchised, people who see no other way out. Al-Qaeda can step into that breach and say, well, look to us. No one's saying that Osama bin Laden's leading the assault here, that there's, but there is a distinct possibility that if tumult ensues after Gaddafi, stability and some brand of democracy doesn't replace him, then anything's possible. And that outcome is very possible. The thing to remember about al-Qaeda is it's not so much an organisation as it is an ideology, which that's what makes it so hard to fight. You've got various groups around the world who buy into the ideology, then they become al-Qaeda, And that's partly why, as I say, it's so hard to battle them. There's no al-Qaeda HQ, very little structure there. It's a set of ideas. Now, the global community will want to keep a close eye on the influences that vie for control, obviously, in Libya.
So when we talk about the rebel groups here, it's very different. We're doctors, teachers, volunteers, former military generals, all kind of a hodgepodge, if you will, of folks. How do we understand how influential this group is, and who really makes up the rebel?
Yeah, you know, that is right. It is very much, let's call it a melting pot, if you like. Mixed in there, you could have elements of al-Qaeda as well, or al-Qaeda leanings. You know, just one more example of how complex and layered the situation is in the Arab world right now. Now, there's one final thing, too, that's worth pointing out here. Al-Qaeda documents that were recovered in Iraq and studied and verified at West Point showed that 1 in 4, 25% of the foreign jihadists fighting Americans in Iraq, guess where, came from Libya, mainly eastern Libya, where these rebels are based. It wasn't a massive number, but I think the percentage is significant, and that's what's worrying a lot of people.
All right, Michael, thank you for your perspective. Obviously, there are still a lot of questions about who these folks are and whether or not they should be supported.
Absolutely, yeah.
Okay.
We don't know what's next.
Thank you.
You could put it ashore there and then literally just drag it across the border. But in any case, officials tell me it's going to require airplanes and ships. The amount of firepower that the rebels need is probably just simply too much to take by helicopter alone.
Experts say Libya's seaports could be used to deliver arms to rebels. Communication equipment would have been more important 10 to 15 years ago, but today all that's required is keeping the cell networks up and running.
They need rifles, they need machine guns, they need anti-tank weapons.
Frank Anderson served 26 years in the CIA. He ran the Afghan task force and helped arm mujahidin fighters there. So he knows what he's talking about when he says,
you can train someone to use a shoulder-fired anti-tank weapon in a matter of hours.
Now, battle tactics, that's different. Anderson says training small unit leaders could take weeks.
But my experience is that Darwin works very quickly in war.
In other words, rebels who survive a battle learn how to stay alive and can teach that to new recruits.
And that's an army that will grow in skill very, very quickly.
But is arming rebels even legal? The U.S. still has diplomatic relations with Libya's government, a government it's effectively trying to overthrow. And there's an arms embargo that applies to the entire country. But U.S. and British officials interpret the UN resolution to allow all necessary measures to protect civilians.
This would not necessarily rule out the provision of assistance to those protecting civilians in certain circumstances.
But Anderson offers this warning from his own experience of Americans arming Afghanistan's mujahideen.
They turned out to be corrupt and rapacious, and I mean rapacious in the sense that they were literally guilty of raping citizens. And they brought on the Taliban.
Now, Anderson tells me that in 10 years of arming Afghans, there were hardly any American boots on the ground. So he says there wouldn't necessarily need to be a big CIA or coalition presence in Libya. But he says if it wants the rebels to succeed in a series of battles, not just spotty or here and there, he says the coalition has to fully commit to giving them enough firepower to beat back larger numbers.